Hi, everyone. We're going to get started in just a few more minutes. If you've just joined, we'll be starting shortly. Give everyone a few more minutes to join. Welcome, everyone. I'm Lisa Bickle, Vice President of Partner Success here at Metametrics, and I'm joined today by my colleague, Amanda Joel, who is the Senior Director of Test Development here at Metametrics. And we're really happy to be here with you on Pi Day today. I hope you enjoyed those Pi Day jokes we found. Full disclosure, I'm in the process of memorizing the first 100 digits of pi. I'm up to about 25 digits, just so I have something to talk about at a cocktail party, right? Okay, all joking aside, we're here today to talk with you about quantile strand level reporting. And you all know that Metametrics is a research company. We've created Lexile measures, which most folks have heard of. We are also the developers of quantile measures. And you can think about a quantile measure as a Lexile measure for math. So today we're going to tag team on these topics here. Amanda's going to talk about some, I'll talk about some. I'm going to talk about how important it is to have information available at that strand or domain level for a student. I'll give you a brief overview of quantile measures. Then Amanda's going to take the reins and talk about our recent research into quantile strand reporting and give you a sneak peek at what we're doing to parallel this for Lexile measures on the reading side. If you have some questions while we're presenting, feel free to put those into the Q&A panel. And then at the end, we're going to be having a raffle for a free pie. Now, this is important to be able to celebrate Pi Day with a free pie. We're going to be raffling off a gift certificate for a free pie from a company called Goldbelly. That's a website. They're a gourmet marketplace. They have some really awesome foods and gifts. So this pie should be mighty tasty. We're going to do this raffle at the end of the presentation using a random number generator. So let's go ahead and get started with the webinar. And a quantile measure is really a way to describe that student's overall math ability. We'll take a dive into this a little bit later, but right now, what we want to focus on and dig a bit deeper into is what can we uncover at the domain level? So throughout this presentation, I'm going to be using the word domain or the word strand interchangeably. So don't get hung up on what I'm calling it, domain or strand. By that, I just simply mean either term. I mean a major subdivision of math content. So let me pose a question to you. And that question is this: what if we could predict student success in Algebra 1 based on domain scores in grade 7? That would be pretty useful, don't you think? Well, it turns out that we actually can. This study that was done by REL Central, they wanted to see whether domain scores from existing assessments could be used to see which students were ready to take algebra, or is a student ready or not in middle school, okay? And so here's what they did. They took a look at the scores from the Missouri assessment program. And it turns out that the Missouri Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, they had not, at that point when the study was done, they hadn't issued any guidelines for determining which students would be ready to enroll in algebra in grade 8. How to make this important decision varied district by district across the state. There weren't any guidelines. So REL started by examining that grade 7 student domain scores from the Missouri assessment program. And here you can see that student score report from the Missouri. You can see the quantile measure there. Missouri's a quantile partner state, so that overall quantile measure is listed on their score report. But what I wanted to point out to you was that domain information, right? You can see that domain information or strand reporting down there at the bottom. And so it's based on that Missouri Assessment Program scale score. So what REL did was they took those grade 7 domain scores, okay, and they associated those with the scale scores on the Missouri Algebra 1 and, of course, assessment in grade 8. And as you might expect, right, all 5 math strands in grade 7 were associated with doing well on that Algebra 1 test in grade 8. But what REL was able to determine was that the domain with the strongest association was the expressions and equations domain. Now, you might think that's like, okay, that's a no-brainer, right? But what the point of that is they were able to prove that with data, and that's the power of that. So this study really provided those Missouri educators with information that helped them to be able to decide which students were ready for Algebra 1 and which students needed more support before they were entering the course. So what that says to us at Metametrics is that domain information can be really powerful. So we agreed here at Metametrics, domain information, strand information, very important. But how would that work with the existing quantile framework? That's what we needed to take a look at before we were able to do anything with this. So let's do a quick review of what a quantile measure actually is, okay, just for everyone's benefit here on this webinar. So when you have a quantile measure, that quantile framework that the measure comes from is really a measurement system that has a developmental scale. That's a scientifically validated scale. And that scale is used to measure 2 things: math student ability and the difficulty of specific math tasks or lessons or activities, right? So here you have a student. This student has a quantile measure of 840 quantiles, and that student's taken an assessment. That's how they got the measure, right? And so that 840 quantile on the student side means that is a measure of their readiness for instruction. And you see that the lesson here is about finding the volume of a rectangular prism. That actually has been measured by Metametrics. It has a quantile measure of 840 quantiles, this lesson. And so what that really means is that when the student is matched with, the student measure is matched with the measure of the lesson, that student is ready for instruction on that particular material. So a quantile measure for students helps teachers to be able to better understand math skills and concept that students ready to learn. A quantile measure for materials is an indication of how complex that skill and concept is in relation to others across a curriculum. And so all the way from kindergarten through calculus. So quantile measures themselves have some uses. They're very useful, right? Some of the things that educators and districts and states do with these measures is to be able to, first of all, track student growth. Could be within a year. A lot of states track growth across the years. They're using quantile measures, teachers do, to be able to say, is this student ready for the lesson? And if not, can I provide some pre-skill instruction if the student's not ready? Or provide enrichment instruction if the student's more than ready. Quantile measures can also be used to project student growth towards college and career readiness. And a lot of our state partners actually use it for this reason. And so I just wanted to kind of update you on our state partnerships here right now. We partner with 21 state departments of education. New Mexico and Arkansas are our newest state partners. And what that means to be a state partner is that we've worked with that state Department of Education to link their summative assessment to the quantile scale. So every student who takes that state assessment at the end of the year gets a quantile measure on their student report at the end of the year. And so here you can see an example of that. This is California's end of year report that goes out to all students. And you can see that the quantile measure there, 950 quantiles front and center right on the report. Okay, so this is just an example. And so if a student is in a state that's not a quantile partner state, that student still could be getting a quantile measure, right? That quantile measure might be coming from one of our commercial companies that we partner with, right? Many districts implement benchmark assessments several times a year to help monitor growth. So you can see this list of companies here who report quantile measures, and those measures get used to guide instruction throughout the year. And so there's a link here, and this is a public-facing list of all of the assessments that report quantile measures. And you all were receiving these slides, so you'll be able to click that link and see that list. So before I was at Metametrics, I was actually the editor-in-chief for a math company, and I wanted to use quantile measures. This was, back around 2006-ish. I had a really big question for Metametrics at that time when we were first getting going, and I said, why am I not getting a quantile measure for each strand or domain? Why is that the case? Okay, so what I'm going to show you now is kind of the answer to that reason, right? So here you can see a problem posed here, finding the measure of a missing angle. Now, what we're going to do here together is to think about the steps involved in it, okay? What steps would you be using to solve this problem? And then for each of those steps, which strands or domains would you be using, okay? So when I did this problem, I actually used the strands that were part of the quantile framework. You can see them listed here, okay? Number sense, algebra and algebraic thinking, numerical operations, measurement, geometry, ending up with data analysis, statistics, and probability. And you can see some examples of skills and concepts that are in each of those strands here for grade 2. By the way, there's 551 skills and concepts in the framework, and each of those are organized into one of these 6 strands. So when I did this problem, I was thinking about these strands. But if you are more familiar or comfortable with domains, then please use those. Okay, so I'm going to put up a poll question now. Here we go. And so I want you to think about this problem and then see when you're solving this problem, how many different strands or domains are used for those skills and concepts that you're using? So let's just kind of answer this and see where we are. Let's give it a minute to see where that is. Might take you a minute to work on the problem, but how many strands or domains do you think you're involved in this? We have some information coming in. Looks like we have a lot for 3 strands. Let's give it one more minute. Okay, yep, some people are still working. Okay, good. All right, I'm going to end the poll and see where we end up with. So it looks like 3 strands or domains. That was the winner. Okay. So let me share the results with you. Okay, there's what we ended up with. So I'm going to close this out. Go back to the slides. Let's take a look at kind of my solution for this and see how many I counted, okay, as we walk through this. So first of all, when you're doing this, you have to say, okay, this is a triangle, it's a right triangle. That's kind of, you know, thinking of it as a geometry strand. You have to also know that the interior angles add to 180 degrees. So that's another concept from geometry. And then I do have to know that in right angles 90 degrees. So that's a measurement concept, right, in the measurement strand. And then in order to solve this, I actually have to either in my head or on paper set up an equation, right? And so that's kind of falling under the algebra and algebraic thinking strand. And then finally, I have to actually, you know, subtract 90 and 50 from 180. So I have to do the calculations. And that's going to fall under numerical operations. So I counted 1, 2, 3, 4 strands when I used to solve this problem from the domain perspective, right? So the point here I'm trying to make is that when you're solving many problems in math, you're actually drawing upon skills from several strands, right? So a quantile measure is really used to describe just that, the overall mathematics ability. So a quantile measure is what we are calling a unidimensional construct, and that means that that student's quantile measure is really representative of overall mathematic ability across all content strands up to now. So what has changed, right? What has changed about the framework? Well, in a nutshell, I can tell you that Metametrics has done more research, new research from Metametrics. So now I'm going to turn this over to Amanda, and she is going to talk you through the research that was done because Amanda was heavily involved in this research. Okay, so Amanda, take it away.
Great. Thank you, Lisa. If you could just advance the slide, please. As Lisa stated, we definitely recognize that strand information is important. And so in 2023, we conducted a research study just to confirm that and to be able to produce whether scores or categorical information to our partners. Go ahead and advance. Thank you. To start, while we knew that providing more granular information would be welcomed by our partners, we felt that it was also important to confirm this by speaking with some of them to determine if the addition of strand-like quantile reporting was something that they'd find useful. We asked if it would be helpful to have more than the overall measure, and how would it be used? What kind of information would they like? And if given the option, would our partners report it? We provided examples of graphs and tables to solicit feedback from them. And we asked if numerical information was critical or if graphical representation would suffice. And finally, we asked what the likelihood was that our current partners would make changes to their existing programs to support quantile strand reporting. Within this question, we inquired about the details for overall blueprints, whether, you know, if the item counts changed, the grade levels, how much time were they willing to put towards an assessment like this. So what we discovered was that educators do in fact want more information so that the quantile measure can be used for learning, where the results are used to more directly inform instruction and provide next steps for students. So then our next step, if you could advance, Lisa, thank you, was to investigate these research questions. So can valid and reliable strand scores be reported from existing quantile assessments? And if not, how long would an assessment need to be to report valid and reliable strand scores? So to answer these questions, we examined 6 research studies where a student was administered a quantile assessment that was developed by Metametrics. 2 were from summative linking exams, 3 were from summative interim exams, and 1 was an interim benchmark exam. Our research team took these and rescored the data using theoretical quantile measures as the difficulty for each item. Through this process, the team created a variety of scores. They started off with the total score. Then they broke it down by 6 strands, the 6 strands that Lisa went over with you that are from our quantile framework. And then we also did a composite score, combining some of the strands that seem to fit together nicely, just to look at the data that way as well. So for 62 assessment forms, they calculated a value added ratio statistic, and that was for a total of 302 strand scores. What we found was that in order to report a quantile measure per strand, the test would have had to have been 120 items in length at a minimum. And you did hear me correct on that. And that's not practical for a benchmark assessment. We know that we don't have that time. We don't want to administer, and our typical tests have many fewer items than this. We're generally looking at exams that range anywhere from 25 to 40 items. So therefore, it was determined that we would offer strand reporting of qualitative or categorical, but not as numbers. So by reporting the strand results this way, educators can be provided with more detailed information about a student's mathematical ability in relation to specific areas based on these strands. Our team also determined the list of requirements because we identified what would need to change from our existing test blueprints and test specifications in order to report by strands, and those are summarized on the next slide. So as you can see, there are requirements for the total number of items. We determined that there need to be at least 30 items for grades K and 1 and at least 45 for grades 2 to 12. This will allow us to have a minimum of 5 to 6 items per strand, and this will allow us to report as in a category. The categories currently that we are supporting are based on the quantile strands. However, we can create test blueprints and specifications based on different strands where we pull in our QSCs and support these numbers for your program. The strands are reported based on the performance on the items within each strand and then displayed categorically. And Lisa's going to go over some examples later on in the presentation to show you how we have seen that done already. And then if you could advance. Finally, we produced this research paper, which summarizes the results of the study. There's a lot more details in this paper, obviously, than we could go over in this webinar. And you can access this from our website, and it will also be included in our follow-up email from this webinar. So what's next? It's a natural step for us to begin this research around the Lexile measures. We knew as soon as we produced anything for Quantile that our partners would say, okay, now what about Lexile? So let me go over what we're looking at for that. We're currently in the process of analyzing the items, the forms, and the overall framework to determine the requirements for producing Lexile measure strand reporting as well. You could advance, please. We're looking at similar research questions to how we looked at Quantile. We're looking at can valid and reliable strand scores be reported from our existing Lexile assessments. We're starting by looking at state standards across the United States to determine the most common strands. We know those vary by grade level, so we really want to be thoughtful in this. Next, we're going to look at a subset of our item banks to determine alignment to those strands. And this will show us the strands in which the Lexile framework currently supports, so that we can see what do our banks currently support. And in addition, we're evaluating sampling of test specifications from some of our current clients. Once we define those strands, we will be able to determine how long the assessments need to be in order to report valid and reliable categorical information similar to the quantiles. So next question, of course, when will this be complete? So our timeline, which is on this next slide, is that during Q1 and Q2, which we're currently in, we will be completing the research activities that I just outlined. So we are currently doing, we're currently evaluating our banks and the standards and aligning our items into different strands so that we can figure out exactly how to do this. In Q3, we're going to be working on any necessary development and work that's needed to productize our new offering and to support it. And our plan is to launch it in Q4. We're really, really excited to be able to provide our partners with this much needed information to support students and educators. So now Lisa's going to go over how it will look within your system.
Thanks, Amanda. So let's take a look at first an example. Amanda said that this would have to be represented not as a quantile measure, but as categorically or graphically. So this is an example of what a report might look like in a product, right? You can see here that we've used colors of red, yellow, and green to indicate, strengths and weaknesses in a particular strand. So you can see this student here is in the green for algebra and algebraic thinking. So what that means is that student is ready for some enrichment activities. And the student is in the yellow for numerical operations, number sense, and geometry. And that means they're ready for grade level instruction. And the student has red for measurement. And what that means is that student's likely to need some prerequisite work on some skills and concepts to get ready, right, in that particular strand for the skills that are on grade level for that strand. And so besides the categories, we're also able to report out a list of skills and concepts that to recommend for each strand, depending on whether the student is red, yellow, or green in that area. So that's listed here on the right. You can see that some prerequisite work for measurement is listed here as well. So this is just one way, like an idea of how you might want to report this graphically, right? You could use categories, you could use progress bars or anything like that that would make sense from that perspective. We're just not going to give a quantile measure for each strand. It's going to be represented some other way. Now, I wanted to give you a preview of what one of our first partners have done. So just to reiterate this, Metametrics would work with our partner companies to be able to provide the information behind the scenes, that quantile strand or domain information to display. But the partner company would need to set it up within their reporting system. And so this is an example here of what our very first partner to use the quantile strand information has done. This is McGraw-Hill. They've set this up in their product called McGraw-Hill Plus. And they provide a level set math assessment and then report out the results in colors using this proficiency scale that you see there. And so using this product, educators can drill down from that overall quantile measure on the top level to the proficiency information at the domain level, in this case, using quantile information behind the scenes. Then they can further drill down to the standard level and finally to the sub-skill level. So we're really excited that McGraw-Hill has incorporated this strand information into their product, right? So, well, that is pretty much it in a nutshell for our presentation today. we have some questions in the Q&A box, but before we go on to the questions, what I'd like to do is to go ahead and announce the winner of our Gold Belly Gift Certificate Pi Day contest. So, drum roll. Here we go. And the winner of the free pie today on Pi Day is Claudia Miramontes. Claudia, you are the winner. And so what we will be doing is to be emailing you, reaching out to give you that gift certificate. Then you can go on to Gold Belly and you can choose the pie that you're interested in, a pie of your choice. And so thank you, congratulations, and happy Pi Day to you. So now we're going to go ahead and go on and take some questions, okay? So, so I have a first question here that says, and this might be for you, Amanda. How are the cut scores or ranges set for the color-coded categories? Can you talk a little bit about that behind the scenes?
We worked with partners to determine that for their own program and kind of the goals of the program. So they're not actually set in stone. They're something that we would be working with you to determine for your program and what makes the most sense. We actually do send back through our API scores. What we are not allowing is for those to be reported. So once you have the scores, then we can help you choose those cut scores.
Okay, thanks, Amanda. Thank you, Amanda. Okay, so another question here is, let's see. You mentioned in order that for the strand information to be reported, how much time does this equate to? Like how much time is involved in order to get this strand information from a particular report? Like how long would it be for us to have to work with a partner? I think we said kind of behind the scenes, Amanda, like this might be a 3 to 6 month project. Can you elaborate on that?
Again, it depends on the size and scope of the project, but we would say 3 to 6 months for us to, from start to finish, for us to be able to produce the items and forms for your program. There are also a few things that we would need to make sure that your program was set up in terms of reporting, but on our end, we would say anywhere from 3 to 6 months.
Okay, good. Thank you. Okay, next question. How could we use this information in high school in conjunction with teaching course material? So if you would, I'll take this one. If you would know that a student was weak in a certain strand, we have tools that are available on our hub that are free that enable someone who's teaching high school to go in and look up particular course, say it's Algebra 1, you could see the strands that are in that course that align to the standards that you're teaching. And so if you know a student was weak in a particular strand, you would be able to go in and find resources and materials to use to help differentiate instruction for those students or group of students. So, you know, we make that available to teachers not only in our partner states, but also teachers who just sign up for a Basic Plus membership, and it's free for teachers to use. So here's a question. How many items in each domain are needed to achieve an accurate quantile measure?
Well, what we determined, as I stated, was that there would need to be over 120 items on the exam. So that would equate to, you know, approximately 15 to 20 per strand. And that's something that we just don't feel is necessary for students to have that large of an exam. But we also know that the market, that's something that is way too long as well. So that's approximately what we determined.
Yeah, and so that hence the reason why we were reporting graphically or categorically, because it's
Right.
not, yeah, it's you know, it's not going to be like sitting on taking a huge assessment, right?
Correct.
Thank you. And then how long would the assessment take for students? I think generally we try to say that an assessment that we provide would be like a class period's worth of time.
That's correct.
Yeah,
So we
yeah.
generally say about a minute per item. So we're saying, a minimum of anywhere from 30 to 45 items, depending on the grade level for these. And so that would be anywhere from 30 to 40 is what we would generally say.
Okay. Great. I think that wraps up the questions for now. So again, we wanted to be able to say thank you so much for joining us today to learn more about the quantile strand level reporting. You will be getting a follow-up email that has these slides and the recording, as well as the research brief that Amanda mentioned. And so feel free to kind of share those jokes we had with you at the beginning. And we want to just wish you all a happy Pi Day. And thank you again for joining us.
Thank you.